Sometimes those that were perceived as nothing more than unworthy burdens will ascend past the gods and punch authority itself. After all, who decided they would be worthless? Qin Shi Huang, the king of the beginning. Beidou, the uncrowned lord of the ocean. But first, let's address something. We will be giving Huang access to Alvitr. If he loses, he will have his soul erased just like in Ragnarok to prevent any respawning shenanigans. With all that out of the way, I am No Name, and I'm here to analyze their powers, techniques, and experience to figure out who wins. Every 500 years, the gods vote to decide if humanity will be wiped out or not, and in the modern day, they decided that it was time for humanity to meet their end. But the Valkyrie Brunhild enacted Ragnarok, a tournament where humanity and the gods fight for humanity's survival. Gods laughed at the idea, but when Lubu and Adam showed the gods could bleed, the gods found out it wouldn't be a walk in the park. And after Buddha betrayed the gods and tied up the scores for humanity, the gods selected the king of Helheim, Hades, as their next fighter. While normally Brunhild would be utterly stressed out to pick a foe for such a mighty god, she was utterly confident in the man she chose. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a king for a king. The king of the beginning, a man who'd sit in Hades' seat like it was his own throne and casually defeat the god of war Ares twice. Who is this man that demanded a literal god to fetch him a drink? Well, he's the original Chinese emperor, the only man to ever approach heavenly emperor status, Qin Shi Huang. But how did this man achieve such a status? Well, he wasn't always Qin Shi Huang, but before we talk about his past, if it wasn't obvious from the way he looks, this is not the same Qin Shi Huang that existed in our real world. But before he was the king at the beginning, he was the outcast child, Ying Zheng. Born the son of a high-ranking aristocrat in enemy territory, he was held hostage and abandoned, living his life as a disgrace and putting on a fake smile to hide his pain. Literally. He was born with mirror-touch synesthesia, a real condition that had Zheng feel the pain and malice of those around him. Manifesting as actual scars on his body, it looked like this young boy would forever be alone and suffering. That was until Chunyan came into the picture. She sympathized with young Zheng and gave him a blindfold to lessen the effects of his MTS. The two became close. They became family. And for once, Ying Zheng was able to smile for real, but this cursed prince wasn't done suffering. The king and the prince of China had died, leaving Zheng's real parents a new ruler, and Zheng a prince. But during his journey to China, they were ambushed, and Chun was killed. In her dying breath, Zheng promised to become the greatest king to ever live, and he'd keep his promise. His father died when he was just the age of 12, and he became the king of China. And ever since his time with Chun, he trained hard until he was ready to become an official king. But he needed permission from the god Qiyu. After messing around with him for a while, he refused the god's demands, proclaiming that all kings before him were no kings at all for bowing to some beast. After a long battle that lasted 6 days, a king, no, the first king, the king of the beginning, Qin Shi Huang, emerged victorious. No wonder why he was chosen to fight in Ragnarok. He already killed one, although I'm sure he was happy to have help when fighting the king of Helheim thanks to his new Valkyrie partner Alvitr. She's a brat, but she immediately fell head over heels for Qin, and honestly, I can't blame her, he's hot as fuck. She granted Qin with a special armor called Almighty Spalders, a perfect weapon for his fighting style that he invented, known as the greatest martial arts of all time, Qiyu. It's considered the ultimate martial art, and has 5 distinct forms based on the weapon that the god Qiyu used. Heavenly Hand of Defense focuses on parries and redirection. While it has a limit to how much energy it can absorb, Qin can quickly adapt, increasing the amount of energy that he can take with each attack that overexerts. Next is Mountai Dragonclaw, which focuses on quick and precise spear-like thrust with laser precision. White Tiger Crescent Moon is a single powerful kick. That's it. It's just a really strong kick. And while that wraps up the techniques Qin can use on his own, with Alvitr he can use Shi Huang Yancut. Normally Alvitr takes the form of armor, but she can also become a sword called the Shi Huang Gauge sword. While using this technique, Qin unleashes all of his power into one powerful slash. That just leaves his last form, Tortoise Ripple, which turns Qin's biggest Achilles heel into his greatest strength. His MTS wasn't entirely a detriment. It allowed Qin to, quote, see stars on people. These are weak spots that Qin can exploit, and Tortoise Ripple definitely exploits them, shooting air pockets from Qin's mouth that weaken an opponent's muscles. This left even Hades on the back foot, and prevented Qin from getting completely flattened under his might. And might is an absolute understatement. Hades is regarded as one of the strongest gods in Olympus, placed right there beside Zeus and Odin. So he should be in the same ballpark as Thor, who in the literal first round of Ragnarok could overpower Lu Bu. And Lu Bu is the physically strongest human for a reason. The guy right before his willful execution was able to split the sky, causing a large amount of clouds to disperse, and while clouds may seem fluffy, in order to move them even a little bit requires the power of an actual nuclear bomb. And not only did Lu Bu split a large formation, the clouds almost instantly split apart, requiring energy worth 467 million tons of TNT. And for further evidence of Qin scaling, Ares was able to match the god of strength Hercules, who should upscale any physical strength feat performed by a human, and Qin beat Ares effortlessly twice. All this made Hades ask a question to Qin: what makes a king? To which he responded, a king never wavers, a king never bends, a king never relies on others, a king always defends his people. And through that answer, Hades found that he and Qin saw eye to eye. The two laughed as Hades remembered his brother that died earlier in Ragnarok. That was his reason for fighting in the Buddha's stead in the first place. So, with a heavy heart, the two fought, and Qin lost his left arm. Everyone begged and pleaded Qin to stop, even Chunyan, but it seems like Qin was always repeating himself to others. A king never wavers, a king never bends, a king never relies on others, and a king never gives up. So in one last clash of the kings, the king of Helheim lost against the king of the beginning. Not only did this give humanity a win, for the first time in Ragnarok, humanity had a point lead over the gods, showing that humans could not only kill gods, but possibly win Ragnarok. And while the next two humans would lose their rounds, the two after them won. And this was all thanks to one man. They say heavy is the head that wears the crown, but to the king of the beginning, nay, the king of humanity, it is as light as a feather.
A king never wavers. A king never bends. A king never relies on others. A king never gives up.
The rush of the current, the crashing of the waves. Nothing quite matches just how awe-inspiring the seven seas quite are. This is doubtably so for the world of Tebet, where their seas are inhabited by a ruthless sea beast. What brave soul could best this diabolical creature? Perhaps one of the gods of Celestia, maybe the Hexam Circle, or perhaps even one of the seven Archons. Nay, for 'twas a pirate lord that loved her crew as much as she loved ale. A woman that was more comparable to a raging storm. Everyone feast your eyes upon this behemoth slayer, and the sole ruler of the seven seas, Beidou. Captain of the crooks, she'd sail the seven seas for the classic pirate reasons. Not to say she's at all greedy. She has one policy for her crew: first come, first serve. If you happen to find any treasure before her, keep it. Though, good luck actually getting any before her. She's basically like if Monkey D. Luffy and Ryuko Matoi did the fusion dance, even right down to their lies before rising up to the top. Originally, to the people of Liyue Harbor, Beidou was nothing more than a poor girl with little money and little to eat. Liyue was a place of business, so with little money she had few options but to steal whatever fruit she could find. However, after chasing a dog to the small village of Downriver, she found a place to stay, and started working as a fisherwoman. However, after only a year after finding a home, the chief that took her in personally fell deathly ill, and the entire village blamed Beidou for his passing. But Beidou wouldn't let herself be burdened by others. She eventually found herself becoming the captain of the crooks, and set off on a 4-day journey to take out a treacherous leviathan known as Haishan, a literal sea god. Beidou stepped up to plate. When the ship's cannons and harpoons only briefly caught the thing, Beidou personally jumped in and fought it for 4 hours straight, and the crooks ended up bringing home a corpse of Haishan. Gotcha. Beidou, due to the combination of bull-headed stubbornness and pure human willpower, managed to slay the beast. And by the way, she did this before getting access to the magic system of this world, which, if you don't know, within the world of Genshin, characters can manipulate one of 7 elements: Animo, Geo, Dendro, Hydro, Cryo, Pyro, and the one Beidou has, Electro. This allows Beidou to channel electricity, purple electricity. Combine this with her immense physical strength, enough to swing around a giant anchor like it's nothing, and Beidou passed a massive punch. Combined with her signature stat stick sword, the Black Cliff Slasher, and she is quite the menace. Beidou's fighting style revolves around hitting hard with large sweeping motions and channeling electricity through the Black Cliff Slasher for powerful attacks. She can fiercely slash her foes with Tide Caller, or form a shield with it to attack even stronger. To complement her reckless fighting style, she has the power to absorb damage to increase her lightning's potency. She can also create shockwaves by stabbing the ground, and even if you remove her sword, she can summon it to herself again at will. She can also glide around with her wing gliders and passively reduce an opponent's electrical resistance with the Bane of Evil. All this power and only a 4-star rarity that I can't seem to roll no matter how many fucking times I try. I just keep getting junk again and again. You'll have to pardon me. With all this, Beidou became a legend in Liyue, so much so that rumors of her accomplishments began to spread, like her actually one-shotting the Leviathan or her splitting a mountain. Obviously, these are meant to be hyperbolic, right? Well, not exactly. We never see Beidou performing these feats. You know, it obviously took her 4 hours to beat Haishan, but her defeating Haishan was enough to impress the Bane of all evil, Zhao. And Zhao is placed very high in the hierarchy of Adepti, and the guy's fought remnants of actual gods. He's also far higher ranked than Shenhe, who once fought a massive sea serpent known as Beidou alongside Beidou and her crew. And Shenhe, after a little bit of traumatic motivation, was able to completely freeze over a giant tsunami that was created by Beidou. To freeze over a giant tsunami like that will require the same energy as an explosive yield of 454 megatons of TNT. That's the same amount of energy as the strongest nuclear bomb ever recorded, 9 times over. It was also stated that things wouldn't have gone so smoothly if not for Shenhe, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Beidou doesn't compare, just that Shenhe made it easier. Beidou would have fought Beidou directly if she wasn't concerned about keeping her crew safe, because ultimately that's all Beidou really has. She is a wanted criminal after all, a pirate through and through, but that never really stopped her from making good friends with her goody-two-shoe rival, Ningguang. And I put friends in quotes there because, come on. We all know what those two really are. Sure, it's only a coincidence that in order for someone to do your dirty work, you decide to almost exclusively hire Beidou. Not the entire crooks, just Beidou. Not like I can blame Ning at all. Beidou's also fucking hot. And despite Ning being a masterful tactician, Beidou has beaten her at chess multiple times. Funny how that works. Beidou's trips made her a living legend and were extremely dangerous. One time they were caught in a dangerous storm and Beidou risked herself, her ship, and her rations just to avoid abandoning a small private boat nearby. She saved the people on board and brought them home safely. And the crew on the boat swore loyalty to Beidou. Her judgment of character and charm were top-notch. When foreigners talk about the Liyue, they only talk about their ability to commodify humanity. However, the crooks and Beidou deny this notion. No one could dare look at the uncrowned lord of the ocean in the face and talk about commodification of humanity. Her charm is so crazy that one time after hosting a celebratory banquet, the chief, despite immediately declaring she hated Beidou, Beidou held no grudge. Giving her a generous amount of money and making her publicity well known, she was won over by Beidou in no time. Because ultimately, that's what Beidou does. She brings people together, she gives them a sword to stay behind, and no matter what monsters, gods, or other threats she faces, she takes them on. Just, don't mention the fact that she knows sea shanties. You don't want to end up like the Hydra she beheaded in one slash. After all, she takes the term, what doesn't kill her makes her stronger, to its absolute limit.
At the very least, you owe me a new ship. I'd kill for a drink right about now.
That's a threat coming from you.
Step right up, get your parlays in, because it is time to figure out who would win. How? This seat is quite comfortable. My compliments to its designer.
You got some serious guts sitting in my seat like that.
You idiot! I told you we would be in trouble for venturing so far out from the arena!
No need to worry, partner. After all, any seat I sit upon shall become my throne.
I'm loving your vibe already. So, who is this intruder that I'm welcoming?
Haven't you heard? I am the king of the beginning, Qin Shi Huang.
Alright, we gonna do this or what?
Indeed. After all, we'll see if you're fit for the crown, uncrowned lord of the ocean.
If you know who I am, then you should know that I won't back down. Ha!
Impressive power, but power alone will not be enough to best me.
I think power will do me just fine.
stronger the more she's hit. You have to take her down quickly.
A king should not rely on the words of others. I had noticed that myself.
I'm trying to help you, idiot. You should pay attention.
You should listen to your comrade and keep your eyes on me. You can feel my pain as well.
That blindfold held special meaning to me, and now you're having pity on me?
Not at all. I can see it in your eyes. You aren't handicapped by it. You were holding back. To think such a mighty mountain is standing in front of me. So quit holding back, King of the Beginning.
They say you cleave mountains in two.
You know how kids can be with their stories.
To a king, a story is merely a fact to be written.
The hell?
Anything new, or have you ran out of tricks, uncrowned Lord of the Ocean? I guess you haven't. Come on, Lord of the Ocean. Are you not a sword fighter?
You idiot! Just lay down! If you die, I'll die too, just to cut your losses and give up.
Don't be stupid. Haven't I told you before? A king never doubts himself. A king is as steady as a rock. A king is self-reliant. A king never gives up.
Right, how could I forget? You ready, partner? Let's win this!
My crew, my comrades, Ningguang, the village. I know they're all cheering my name. So, I'll charge head on! I know I can do this. So I'll picture that victory. Not bad for a chair thief.
On my honor as the king of all mankind, I hereby dub you Queen of the Ocean, Beidou. How? That was a wonderful fight.
Alright, that was a whole new level of close. Qin got less messed up in his cannon fight than against Beidou. I wonder how Ning will react to this. I'm sure she's fine. This matchup was by far our closest yet, and when looking at our three most relevant categories, it was a constant back and forth. Let's start with strength. Despite the two's crazy reputation in their home series and their quite frankly massive amount of aura, neither is as strong as their compatriots. Qin is heavily reliant on skill and pressure points, while Beidou's best feats are hyperbolic, obviously false rumors. Despite this, in order to keep up with the people they fight with, they can't be that far off. High ends exist for both, but when looking at Shenhe and Lubu, the two were nearly even. That's a 1.02 times power advantage in Qin's favor. Such a minuscule number that it's basically irrelevant. But the conversation doesn't necessarily stop there. Qin is definitely not exactly strong as Lubu, but Beidou likely won't exactly be as strong as Shenhe either. You have to rely on scaling chains and narrative implications to make them compare, and while this doesn't invalidate the scaling for either, it's such a minuscule gap we might as well just call it a tie. But both have their ways of messing with their own and others' powers, so surely their techniques will break the deadlock and give them the edge. In terms of raw versatility, Qin had more techniques, but Beidou had more weapons. But ultimately, what's relevant to compare here is Tortoise Ripple and Tidecaller. With every strike Qin lands, it will be powering up Beidou more and more, and given their similar strength, Qin wouldn't be one-shotting Beidou anytime soon. However, it's unlikely Qin would be able to be one-shot by just a few stacks of Tide Color either, especially with his Volunda, but Qin figures out Beidou's trick, or hell, what could happen before she even lands one strike. Qin could easily just use Tortoise Ripple to weaken Beidou, and possibly even disarm her. And of course, this would mean practically nothing to Beidou, since she would just resummon her weapon, then Qin would attack, Beidou would get the buff, Qin would weaken Beidou, again and again. It's a seemingly endless loop. Beidou did have some ranged options to potentially counter Qin, but Qin would be far superior in close range with his varied techniques. Especially since he'd slowly get used to the damage Beidou could dish out over time and absorb it elsewhere. Beidou's biggest advantage is her shockwave and natural lightning, but to Beidou's credit, those are the only damaging ranged options at play here, and Tortoise Ripple likely can't affect something without pressure points. Qin could also likely still adapt, but that doesn't change techniques from being another tie. That just leaves skill, which is when this deadlock finally breaks. Beidou is not unskilled, however her fighting style is very reckless, running into danger head-on. And while this works great normally, against Qin Shi Huang it's an active detriment. Huang is more used to fighting against big brutes, and his own fighting style directly counters people who use large attacks. Every attack Beidou makes is going to be met with a parry and a redirection into a big attack of Qin's own. This may help with buffing Beidou, but then the loop will repeat, and Qin will be the only one doing any damage at that point. By the time Beidou realizes she'd need to keep her distance, she'd already taken damage, and Qin is more than experienced enough to close the gap and avoid her attacks. Beidou has been fighting for a long time, but even when Huang was alive, he was fighting for far longer, let alone the thousands of years of experience he gained training in Valhalla. Beidou did impress Zhao, which was similarly thousands of years old, however Zhao was specifically impressed by Beidou's strength, not her skill. With Qin Shi Huang's greater skill, he'd be more than capable of exploiting Beidou's weaknesses and landing the killing blow first, but definitely not before the fight of his fucking life. Qin's MTS may make it seem unlikely he could take the punishment he's both taking and doing to Beidou. He's learned to deal with it and in general has shown far greater stamina than Beidou. Beidou battled the Leviathan god Haishan for 4 hours straight, a crazy feat of stamina, but Qin battled Qiyu for 6 days straight. Longer than the 4 days we know to be Beidou's maximum time at sea. And while, to be fair, Beidou didn't have her electro powers at the time, Qin didn't have Alvitr, hadn't mastered his MTS, and hadn't invented his martial arts yet, which he would do after killing Qiyu. He had way more handicaps and still came out relatively unscathed despite battling for 6 days straight, showing a level of stamina Beidou couldn't keep up with. Beidou was crazy powerful and mentally persistent and could certainly win in select scenarios. Against Qin's unmatched techniques, crazy experience, and unmatched pain tolerance, he would come out victorious. While Beidou was no damsel, Qin Shi Huang proved he didn't need to put his queen on a throne to pop a champagne and raise a toast. The winners are Xingzheng, the king of the beginning, Qin Shi Huang, and Valkyrie Alvitr.